What's up, guys? This is Tom with Stocked Up, and we have an action-packed week ahead of us in the stock market. We actually have a ton of big earnings coming up as earnings season is actually re-kicking off. I felt like earnings season actually just ended. The S&P 500 had a pretty insane end of the week. We had that big dip down with that jobs report last week. Now this week we have some pretty big economic data on the calendar. So make sure you guys watch until the end of today's video. If you're not subscribed yet, make sure you smash that subscribe button and hit that bell notification so you guys get notified every single time that we post a video. But let's get right into the S&P 500 and some of the stock market action from last week. So we actually had a pretty good week to start things off. You know, Monday, we stayed up right around highs, but then Tuesday, we started to really fall back off to the downside. And then Wednesday morning into Thursday, or I should say like Wednesday night into Thursday, we actually saw that big drop to the downside with that jobs report coming out. Now the S&P 500 dropped right down to a pretty big trend line that I've been following a little bit. Some of the guys on the live stream alerted me to this. I've been watching this channel here. We recently actually broke it back off to the downside. Now we're actually having a bit of a double top up around this 444 resistance. If this double top holds up this week, we should see some pretty good selling pressure, especially if we see this downwards trend start to break. Now, right now, this trend line's been pretty good. It's to the upside. But if we do see a break here, we should see a drop to the downside. And then maybe the S&P 500 could come back up and retest this. And then we'll see a bigger drop off to the downside if we retest maybe off of 440, maybe 439, something like that. But the overall stock market did start to pull back a little bit there last week. So that was a little bit worrisome. Now, it was a short week and we had that bad jobs report mixed in. But let's go ahead and get into exactly what everybody wants to hear about this week. And that is that we're going to have the big inflation data coming out on Wednesday, 1 hour before the market opens. We're going to actually see the inflation rate year over year, along with the core inflation rate, start to come out. Now, what's very interesting to me is looking at the inflation rate. We're looking at this to come in around 3.1 to 3.2%. We're actually getting very, very low right now, back to the downside, which is fantastic. We've been wanting inflation to fall as much as possible, and if it keeps going down, that would be great. But something that I see that worries me is that core inflation is only expected to fall about 0.3%, while the overall inflation rate is expected to fall 0.8 to 0.2%. Now, what's core inflation? Core inflation actually excludes food and energy, which is a pretty bad thing. Warren Buffett has actually said some pretty funny things about this as well. But looking at the stock market right now, obviously inflation is it's a very big data point that the Feds are going to be watching. You know, they've been trying to bring that down towards their 2% goal. To be honest, if we come in at 3.1 to 3.2%, that would be great. But one issue that we keep having is these job numbers, like those ADP jobs numbers last week beat expectations by over 100%. That's wild. And I did see that there's actually some initial jobless claims numbers also coming out Thursday, 1 hour before the market opens, as well with PPI. So keep that in mind as well. So there is some pretty big economic data points on the calendar for this week. And now let's actually get into some of the earnings for the week. I know a lot of you guys love earnings. You love to play it. You love to see what's going on. Here on Monday, Helen of Troy, WD-40, nothing too crazy. Wednesday, really nothing. Thursday is where we really get into the big earnings. So we have Delta Airlines, Pepsi, Progressive, ConAgra, Fastenal, pretty big companies there. Now, Friday is where we really are kicking off the earnings season. I always say that banks always kick us off. I guess you could say Delta kicks us off, but the banks always kick us off too. JP Morgan, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, BlackRock. Guys, BlackRock is going to be very important. A lot of people have been talking about that Bitcoin ETF, and we're actually going to talk about Bitcoin coming up here in just a few seconds. So stick with us. There's a lot of big plays and stuff like that coming up throughout this video as well. But yeah, these big banks are going to be reporting on Friday, so keep that on the calendar. But I mentioned BlackRock and that Bitcoin ETF, and I really wanted to talk about Bitcoin right now because it's actually been holding up pretty well. It's been staying pretty high in a channel recently. If we look, Bitcoin recently had that big explosion back at the end of June. They exploded up, and all July, they've just been sitting here stuck pretty much between 30,000 and 31,500. Now, I know that the top, well, actually it's almost perfect with 31,500. So as we're watching Bitcoin, if we start to see a significant break above this week, we could see a more significant run out of some of these Bitcoin stocks like Mara, Coinbase, stocks like that. Let's actually look at Mara. Last week, this stock kept exploding to the upside, even as Bitcoin was just channeling. Coinbase and Mara continued to move up. Now, let's go over to Coinbase. It was a little bit more flat, but still had some great upwards potential. A lot better than I saw with some of the other, stocks in the market. So I'm definitely going to keep Coinbase and Mara on the watch. Mara is definitely a stock that had a lot of upside potential. Now, I will say on Friday, pretty big dip down, but in after hours, it definitely came back. So I'm just going to keep my eyes on Bitcoin. I know a lot of you guys like it. If you do, let me know in the comments down below. I'm a pretty big fan of Bitcoin. It's not my favorite for the long term, but I'm a big fan of trading it and trying to trade some of these stocks like Mara, Coinbase, stuff like that. There's some really fun stocks out there. And if we even see more news with the BlackRock ETF, that might even cause even more movement coming in here. But I really wanted to get into now some of the treasury yield news that we've been hearing here over the past couple weeks. I've been talking a lot about TNX and some of these treasury yields starting to really move to the upside. Now, I'm not usually a big fan of treasury yields, and I would say, I would go ahead and just say trend lines. It's a bit of a touchy subject. Some people, they believe in trend lines, some people don't. I'm somebody who I actually believe in them. I think that there's some type of significance, especially whenever you look at something like TNX and you just see, it playing out so perfectly on these trends. Now I get it. There might be something more behind the scenes, like maybe algos are trading off these trends, maybe hedge funds, maybe a bunch of retail traders. There's a bunch of different ways to look at this right here. But I saw Cheddar Flow actually had a pretty big post about this on Twitter today, and I saw a lot of people talking about it. Treasury yields break out of their downward trend, and I actually noticed this towards the end of last week. I think this is going to be very significant for the stock market, and this actually started to happen as we saw that ADP jobs report come in a little bit sour. Now, I know that it seemed like that job report was good, but that means that the Feds are going to need to hike rates later in the year. It looks like the yields are kind of going up in anticipation of that, in my opinion. If you think that there's another reason for that, let me know in the comments down below. But in my opinion, I think that we're seeing yields and stuff start to go up because the Feds are going to have to hike rates later in the year, and people are starting to see that. And I think that these could go a little bit higher. They are really breaking a pretty big trend. We go look at TNX. I mean, that trend line is near perfect here. Tons of bounces there. I know TNX follows the 10-year. Let's go look at US 10Y. If anyone's on TradingView, that would be how you look it up. Let's go ahead and draw another trend line on here. Maybe just line up these tops. And I mean, it's pretty damn perfect. And what I like about it is that it didn't just break, right? It actually had a lot of consolidation right here. There's a lot of doji candles for all my price action traders out there. Shoot me a comment down below. How do you feel about this? Do you think it's a significant breakout? Personally, I do. I mean, that's pretty damn good. That's like textbook right here as far as a breakout above a trend line. So I appreciate that. Let me know in the comments down below. But I think that's going to be a pretty big revelation going forward as these yields rise and as we start to see these bigger tech stocks like Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft, and etc. start to fall. Now, I know Nvidia actually had a green candle Friday, but let's go to Microsoft, for example. It had a pretty good morning and then actually turned very sour. So I'm actually going to be looking at Microsoft here for a bit more of a play to the downside. And what's pretty significant to me is that I see this going on with, obviously the treasury yields, everything like that. I see the tech stocks starting to fall down like Microsoft. I actually have a awesome chart showing how much market cap goes into the S&P 500 for some of these tech stocks. Right here at the top, tech accounts for 28% of the S&P 500's market cap today. It was 33% during the tech bubble. Look at how wide it started to get there right into 2000. Look at where we are right now. Again, it's starting to get a little bit wider. Now, there might be some arguments for this, right? You might say, well, hey, maybe tech is starting to get wide again because there's just more tech companies coming in. It makes sense. There's solar companies, there's EV companies, all that type of stuff starting to come in. That might start to fall under, tech in more of a way. Now, what I'm going to also say, though, is that at the same time, it's still staggering to see it start to get that wide now. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to have a bubble like we were in the early 2000s, but a lot of these stocks lately have been flying up super high. Now, I'm not saying that we're necessarily having a bubble, like I said, but, you know, they talk about the dot-com bubble, right? And then in 2008, we had the financial collapse. So it was like, we had the dot-com bubble. A lot of those big tech stocks fell. Financial collapse, right? A lot of stocks fell, but, you know, a lot of those banks fell as well. This time, what's been happening a lot is that a lot of these big AI stocks like Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, stocks like that are exploding. And I mean, Nvidia is just textbook here. I mean, it's one of the bigger stocks on the market. It's been actually following a pretty big trend here since the beginning of June. If we start to see a move under this trend line, I think that Nvidia could really start to pull back here. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be too big, but something like the 380, 370, something like that, I think could actually be pretty realistic here. So I will keep these stocks on watch to the downside. I thought that that was very interesting to see that we're actually getting back to that point where tech is making up enough of the S&P 500 that if we do have a tech collapse, that would be pretty worrying considering it, you know, is approaching 30% again like we saw. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And talking about some of the big tech stocks, Meta and Twitter, of course, are going to still be beefing here. We have Threads and Twitter. It looks like Threads actually exploded 70 million signups one day after launch. And what's interesting is I saw an awesome quote. Meta only needs 1 in 4 Instagram users to use Threads monthly for it to be as big as Twitter. That is actually a pretty big thing to hear. 1 in 4 Instagram users would pretty much make them as big as Twitter, they're saying here. That is a huge statement in my opinion. Now, I know Twitter is bigger than Instagram. It's smaller than Instagram. It's smaller than Facebook. So, you know, that makes sense. I just didn't realize it was 1 in 4 whenever you look at that. Now, as I scroll down through here, I see that Twitter reports nearly 238 million monetizable daily active users last summer in their last earnings report as a public company. So keep that in mind. It's their last report as a public company. So over the past year, there could be a little bit more of that going up, but I thought that that was a pretty big number. 238 million monetizable daily active users. Looks like Meta could possibly catch that here sometime soon. They're already at 70 million. If it just keeps going up, you know, that could be good for them. Now let's actually go look at Meta stock really quickly because last week it started to really turn over. It was one of the bigger stocks that I noticed to the downside. So I did notice that stocks like Meta, Microsoft, Apple, Tesla had really big moves here back off to the downside. Now I think that there's going to be a bit of a pullback coming into these stocks soon. And I don't think it's necessarily because they're bad or because of anything like that. They've just been up too much in the short term. The Feds are starting to talk about raising interest rates again, and that's going to be it's going to play a big role in the market. Now, let's see how this inflation rate comes in this week on the economic calendar, but that could also end up playing a big role into how some of these tech stocks move this week too. But I'm definitely leaning to the downside. You know, there's a lot of hits off these upper resistances, and man, some of these moves back down are definitely scary, especially with Meta. Like if some of these supports break, I think there could be some pretty significant pullbacks, especially like if we go out to an hourly chart of Meta and we see it from low to high recently. Like, let me know in the comments down below. Are you buying Meta right now? Seriously, whenever it just ran up 237, 240%? If you do buy it right now, I mean, come back at me in like 5-6 months and let me know. If it goes up, I'll give you a congratulations. But if not, oh man, I feel bad. That's all I gotta say. But just be careful buying up here. It's just a little bit too high, in my personal opinion. If you guys think differently, let me know in the comments. I think all opinions are good to be shared here. But let's go ahead and actually get into some of the momentum plays here. So with the first one, we have Microsoft. I know I talked about this stock to the downside a lot here today. Man, on the hourly chart, they look pretty rough. So if they actually end up breaking down below 336.80, I'll be watching for puts to the downside come Monday morning. I think it could be a very good stock to play to the downside. You know, there's a lot of downwards action coming into these tech stocks on Friday, and if they break support, they should have pretty big moves down. So just keep that in mind, and yields are on the rise too. To me, that's even bigger than, you know, most things in the stock market here. So Microsoft to the downside. I actually have Apple to the downside as well. Now, I know those are two big tech stocks. Make Apple break below 190. Pretty big support down there. If they break below 190, go ahead and look at some puts. If BABA ends up moving up, I should say, BABA actually surprised me last week, 8% to the upside. on Friday. Look at that weak correlation to the SPY in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That's significant there. I think that if these China stocks continue and BABA breaks above 91.70, go ahead and look at calls. That could be a good play up. It's definitely inversing the overall market right now. So I like that. Good stuff, BABA. Keep having a mind of your own. It's a China stock. It's not really going to move with the overall market there. But let's go ahead and get into my plays for the day. Well, so my first play is going to be AMD. Now, I know I look at AMD to the downside all the time, right? And the upside, honestly. Both ways. It's one of my favorite stocks out there to trade. If they end up falling under 112 even this week, I will be looking at puts. I think that come Monday, we're going to see a pretty significant pullback, especially out of these semiconductors. So keep that in mind. AMD to the downside. With the next play, I'm looking at DraftKings. This one is to the upside. And I know that might surprise some people. They actually have a fairly strong correlation to SPY compared to a lot of growth stocks. They had a nice 5.6 run up on Friday. What I love about DraftKings is that this is going to be the first year where they're expecting profitability out of their company overall, which is great. So if they break above $27, go ahead and look for calls. I think that DraftKings could be a great potential play to the upside. And as Mike would always say, it's time to get into everybody's favorite part of the video, and that is the big money play of the day, which is actually British Petroleum. 35.5 strike calls for $526,000 expiring July 21st of 2023. It sounds like somebody is betting on British Petroleum going to the upside in the short term. Now, I think this could be a pretty good potential short-term play here. I do like British Petroleum possibly to the upside. There's a huge support down around 34.20 to 34.50. There's been so many bounces here ever since the beginning of June. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 bounces pretty much right here. So I'll be watching this to come back up as I watch crude oil as well. I've been watching them down around support. If crude keep bouncing down here around 67, we had a nice move up on Friday night as well. That's great. You know, if crude keeps going, that's even better for British Petroleum. So keep your eyes on this big money play. It's a shorter term play than usual, but I like that. You know, if you guys are some more riskier type of traders, keep this on watch. You know, if you start to see it run up the next couple days, maybe follow it with some momentum plays. Just because they're buying the July 21st 35.50 strike calls, does that mean that you have to go into that one? No, it doesn't. You know, if you keep seeing some good movement, like come Monday morning, you see a good move, maybe above like 35.60, 35.70, maybe go ahead and get the 36 strike calls that expire next week. You know, make it a day trade if you want. As always, though, you know, do your own due diligence, calculate risk. You don't want to go in too risky or anything like that. Always keep it safe. But, you know, the big money has been pretty good lately. Some of these plays have been awesome. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We go over these plays every single night. There's multiple of these plays posted every single week, and usually they pop off pretty well, especially lately. So I've been loving the big money plays, and even following some of the big money on like Lucid, Rivian, stuff like that. I mean, it's been great lately. Like, look at that. Look at Rivian Friday, or I mean Lucid, 5.23%. Rivian also had a fantastic move, 14.25%. And look at all these big money plays going into this lately, guys. Just smash that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments if you guys have any plays on Rivian. I know some of the members out there like Manny have done great with them. And talking about members of the day, let's go ahead and talk about Tangy, man. Tangy, you have been an amazing subscriber of the Discord community. Thank you so much. You've been around for a long time. And man, you've been doing so well lately as well. Look at this, 2023 realized gains in my trading IRA. Note, in all but one of these, I'm still holding an open position. Some profitable, some nearly profitable. Palantir will be higher. At the end of the day, Tangy, these are some pretty good positions here. So good stuff. I know you're an awesome member of the community. You're always trying to help guys out. And you're also one of the guys who love to sell puts, get into the swing, or get into the wheel strategy. You know, I was going to say swing strategy, but wheel strategy. Man, the wheel strategy where you sell puts, so then you start selling covered calls after you get positions. It's an awesome way to go. So good stuff, Tangy. I love your plays on those uranium stocks as well. Keep killing it. UEC is the best one. I know you've been commenting about that one every single night. So thank you so much, Tandy, for being an awesome part of the community. But let's have a great week, guys. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments down below how you feel about the market this week. I think we're going to see a pullback. SPY's starting to double top up there right around 444. On the other side of things, if we do break out above 444, look for some calls. But I'll definitely be leaning more to the downside, especially with what we saw on Friday and how the Feds are leaning more towards those rate cuts. So let's go hit that subscribe button. Let's have a great week, and I'll talk to you guys later.